Match number 1, Minnesota taking on the Atlanta FaZe. This is the first matchup between these two teams since the league went online. The series is tied 1-1 with the ROKKR winning the last match at the LA home series. Seems like a lifetime ago. Can the ROKKR turn it around here? I feel like the weight is a little bit off their shoulders because they have nowhere to gain and nowhere to lose, really. But which team here would you say, like, do you think this is an opportunity for Minnesota to say, okay, let's just test ourselves against a team like Atlanta here?
I mean, it's like saddens me that Minnesota have performed as poorly as they have online for a few reasons. And one of them is because when we were talking about this matchup at the, after they almost beat FaZe in Atlanta, right? And then they go to beat them in LA. This was a matchup where we were like, okay, like this ROKKR team can hold their own against the guns of FaZe, and that's actually super impressive. And now this matchup is completely different. I do actually think that FaZe have more pressure on them in this first round than ROKKR do, for reasons that you already mentioned, because, A, people aren't expecting the ROKKR to win, but B, the ROKKR in moving around within their own seeding don't have as much to lose as the FaZe do, right? Like the FaZe really want to lock up that number 1 seed. So, and especially after their more recent loss, I think they probably feel like they have a lot more to prove in this matchup. I still think the FaZe will win. Because I haven't seen anything from the ROKKR recently that would convince me otherwise. But I would love for something to happen, like a switch to be flipped, and it to be like what we saw from ROKKR FaZe matchups in Los Angeles and in Atlanta.
So the Atlanta FaZe have the lowest overall difference between LAN and online. They had a 78.8% win rate on LAN. And so far online, their win rate is 57.6%, which is a difference of minus 21%, which is unfortunate.
I mean, not great, but I also think so again, like I'm not taking away from the fact that I think Atlanta would probably perform better if it was on LAN. But I think that part of that is also that a lot of teams have kind of caught up to Atlanta's understanding of the game, and Atlanta were one of the first teams to come out and really embrace the game and embrace how to play. And, they had the super aggressive SMGs. And I think that the meta changes that we've seen aside, I think that other teams have caught up to the FaZe's understanding of the game. And that's a lot more of what we've seen rather than the FaZe just looking really lost online. I also think that their dominance that they had over the first few weeks definitely wasn't sustainable for those reasons. They would have had to keep improving on an insane trajectory in order to hold off the rest of the teams and keep having that win rate.
Moving on to the Dallas Empire taking on the Florida Mutineers. This is a rematch of the London semifinal match, of course. Dallas have swept the Mutineers 3-0. The Florida Mutineers have had success against the Empire. I want to call attention to one thing. So after every home series on our website, espn.com/esports, we do a coaches poll. It's an anonymous poll that coaches basically rank the teams in the CDL. Going into this weekend, the Florida Mutineers were number 1 on this coaches poll. Dallas was number 2. Coming out of this weekend, Dallas was number 1, perhaps understandably so. They just won another home series, and they defeated Florida in the process. But according to the coaches around the league, Florida drops to number 4, which I found to be interesting. That is a sharp drop after this weekend's results. It was a convincing victory, don't get me wrong. But they still look like a menacing team online, even if they didn't make the final this home series. So how do you think they're looking at this matchup and the fact that they get to run it back so soon against Dallas?
I mean, I still give Dallas this matchup. Maybe it won't be like a 3-0 sweep, but If I had to hazard a guess as to the somewhat precipitous drop in the coaches poll, and again, this is kind of it's like based on hearsay, right? Like I'm kind of making a lot of assumptions, but I think the thing with Florida was that, you know how we talked about the subliners and how they were known as such like this insane scrim team. Florida was the team that showed up at events, right? Like they showed up at online events. Suddenly, you know, they were insane whenever like the event pressure was on. And other like Florida, I think probably a little bit more. I don't think they're bad in scrims, but I don't think they have the same like firepower that you see from them on at an actual tournament. So when they falter at a tournament like this, I think that's when they drop significantly in people's estimation. Again, I'm making a lot of assumptions, but I think that's most likely what's behind the drop. I think Florida can still be a dangerous team, but we definitely did not see them at their best this weekend. Like I said, that first match against Optics, really close. Unfortunately, the match against their second qualification match. So, like, first of all, one thing we haven't mentioned is that London beat them, and they were the first qualifier out of that bracket, not Florida, as we may have expected. But then we also, unfortunately, have that match where looming over Florida's head are those kind of wonky spawns in that second series they had against Optics. So,
I'm with you, I think
like,
Dallas takes this one.
I think Dallas is just the better team here, honestly. Like from what we've seen from both of these teams recently.
Dallas really made me believe that they would. I thought Florida would have the edge just based on their online play, but this past weekend really reminded us that Dallas is the most well-equipped team to, in high-pressure situations, to be the team to pick in a playoff format. Like they just show this resiliency that even when they have bad results, they're able to bounce back very quickly. If Florida have a good showing here, and if they go so far as to win the home series, that could definitely sway people's opinions, including a victory over Dallas. But Dallas have really their body of work speaks for itself, and also obviously the veterans on that team. Let's go Seattle taking on Chicago. I'm pretty sure we know who's going to win this game if you ask many people. But let me ask just Chicago overall. Like, what results for you would give you more confidence in this Huntsmen team?
I mean, I think Chicago need to make it out of Group A as the first seed, honestly.
Okay.
I think they should. Like, if we're looking at a tournament where all top 4 seeded teams right now are playing, and 3 of them are on one side of the bracket and 1 of them is on the other side of the bracket. So, like, this is the time when we talk about what makes a championship team. It means you beat the opponents that you're expected to beat. And no offense to all of the other 3 teams in this bracket, but if we're expecting Chicago to be a championship team, these are 3 teams that they should beat, including Seattle, obviously. I feel really badly talking about Seattle at this point, because if I'm on Seattle, I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm done. Like, you know, like this season's over. We're chalking it. We're going next. We've already lost. And like that, I'm not saying that's what Seattle is thinking, but like, it's been a rough year for Seattle overall, right? I definitely think Chicago takes this, but if you're asking me like, what does this say about Chicago? I think they absolutely need to make it out like 2 series into semifinals.
Which is going to be tough because you have Toronto and Optic with so much to play for. So that they might be more, you could say that they would have a lot more motivation to pick up points than Chicago, because Chicago knows, win or lose, they're in the top 4 anyway. So that might make for some interesting results.
Yeah, weirdly, this like is the first round series I'm looking forward to the most, because I'm like, okay, like you guys, I still don't have a really great read on you. And it could be like, I'm expecting this to probably be a 3-2. I'm going to give the edge to Toronto, but like I really liked a lot of things I saw from Optic this past weekend. It's really going to be about whether they can put the London home series behind them and kind of come out and be like, okay, that happened and it sucked, but we're in control of our own destiny and we can place as high as 6th. So, I mean, they of all teams probably have they should be having like the most hunger coming into this, right? Because
absolutely
they can move up significantly from where they're at right now.
They also have
they're technically in charge of it because they're playing.
Exactly. And they both, oddly enough, OGLA and Toronto have extremely similar online win percentages. 47.7% for OGLA and 47.5% for Toronto. So they're like very, very close in the win percentage standings in online play in CDL this season. And yeah, they have their fate in their own hands. You win and you move up. And it's as simple as that, with OGLA having the opportunity to go further along.